Imagine being a young boy, torn from your family, and marched through the gates of the Ottoman palace, not knowing if you were about to rise to unimaginable power or vanish into a life of silence. For centuries, the Sultan's court took boys from conquered lands, reshaping them into soldiers' servants, and sometimes something far more secretive. Some became feared janissaries, others were drawn into the Sultan's inner chambers, living lives of luxury laced with control. Behind the glittering tiles and golden arches lay rules, rituals, and punishments that determined who survived and who was forgotten. This is the untold story of what really happened to those boys, a world hidden behind palace walls. Comment the time you're watching this. I love seeing when my history travelers join the journey. And if you want more forbidden history revealed, subscribing is up to you. But the next secrets are darker still. They come for you in the quiet hours when the roosters are still half asleep and smoke of last night's fire lingers in the air. You don't get a vote in this. The men ride in with the weight of empire behind them. One moment, you're a boy pulling weeds from the fields. The next, you're property of the Sultan. It's called the Devshirme, a word that sounds foreign in your mouth, though it will shape your entire future. Imagine the scene: strangers in embroidered cloaks pointing at you as if you're a calf in the market, mothers clutching sons' wrists, fathers bargaining with a desperation that never works. You've heard whispers of this day, but the human mind always prefers denial until the hoofbeats drum right at the doorstep. The officials don't need to shout. Authority hums from the polished hilts of their swords and the banners snapping in the morning breeze. You watch them scan the village like a hawk measuring prey. Height, teeth, shoulders, the set of your jaw. Everything is weighed. You are not a person to them, you are potential. One boy is too scrawny, waved away like a broken tool. Another, too old, shoved back into the crowd. Then their gaze settles on you, and there is no escaping that silent verdict. Mothers howl, some faint, some follow after, until they are beaten back. The officials call it the levy of boys, but to families, it feels more like a kidnapping wrapped in legal parchment. Still, the empire justifies it as opportunity. You'll be raised in the palace, taught languages, trained for greatness. It's a polished promise, but to your ears, it's noise drowned out by your mother's sobs. Would you believe the sales pitch if you were standing there barefoot in the dust? Probably not. For the Ottoman state, though, this practice is genius. Fresh blood, loyalty disconnected from old tribal ties, soldiers and servants molded straight from childhood. That's how the empire sustains itself, by reaching into the lives of ordinary villagers and plucking out human resources like coins from a purse. Think of it as the ultimate HR department. Only the benefits package is compulsory, and the exit interview can be fatal. Some boys in your line cry until they hiccup, others march stiff with shock. You perhaps stare at the ground toes digging into dirt, the last piece of home you'll feel for a long time. One boy dares to shout that he won't go, and an officer smacks him so hard the silence afterward is louder than any scream. That's the first lesson, obedience. The second comes quickly, detachment. As the procession leaves, the village shrinks behind you. The smells of bread baking, the sound of goats, the comfort of known faces all recede. What replaces them is the jangle of chains, the rhythm of marching feet, and the realization that your childhood just ended in a single morning. It's not dramatization, it's logistics. The empire needs bodies, and you're one of them. Some historians point out that a handful of families actually volunteered their boys, believing service to the Sultan would bring fortune. It happened, yes, but more often, the cries of resistance told a truer story. For every father who hoped his son might one day be a grand vizier, 10 more cursed the levy as a theft of bloodlines. You caught in the middle don't get to choose which side of history your story will end up on. And so the column snakes away from the village, a trail of stolen futures moving toward the horizon. Dust clings to your face, tears streak through it, but no one wipes them. The guards keep you moving because standing still would invite second thoughts, and second thoughts are bad for empire. You realize, with a sudden chill, that even the land you grew up on now feels foreign, as if it already belongs to someone else. It's the strangest sensation you are alive. Breathing, walking yet in some sense, you've already become a ghost in your own life. The march to the capital is not a sprint. It's a slow grind of days that blur together into dust and aching feet. You're herded with dozens of other boys, a human caravan pulled along by men who never bother to tell you where the road ends. The sun scalds by day, the cold gnaws by night, and your world shrinks to the sound of boots and the sting of hunger. Every step forward is a reminder that you're being carried away from everything familiar. It's like moving houses without packing anything, except this time you'll never see your old home again. The guards keep a rhythm, their orders sharp, their whips sharper. You learn quickly that silence is safer than complaints. Some boys whisper at night, trading rumors about Istanbul. They say the city has so many domes, it looks like a forest of stone mushrooms, that the markets sell spices glowing red and gold, that the sea itself bends to the will of the Sultan. Whether any of it is true doesn't matter. Stories are oxygen when your reality tastes only of dust. Occasionally, you pass villages where curious eyes peer out. Women clutch their children tighter, men lower their gazes, and you realize that you've become a living warning. This is what happens when the empire comes knocking. Some brave souls toss scraps of bread or dried figs toward you, small rebellions that the guards sometimes allow, sometimes punish. The unpredictability keeps everyone tense. What surprises you most is how quickly the boys adapt. Within a week, you can read the rhythm of the march, when the breaks will come, how to scavenge for water when the guards look away. It's survival school before the palace has even touched you. Hunger teaches more than any tutor. Have you ever noticed how quickly humans can adjust when there's no alternative? This is one of those times. There's also the strange companionship forming among the boys. Rival villages, even rival religions, lose their sharp edges when you're all trudging under the same sun. One boy tells you he was taken from the Balkans, another from the mountains of Anatolia. Different languages, different songs, but the same weary eyes. Shared misery makes for quick bonds, though you all know those bonds will be tested later. At night, when the fires crackle, you catch fragments of guard conversations. They speak of the Sultan like he's half man, half legend. Some call him Padishah. Some whisper his name as if it might summon him. The way they talk, you'd think he dines on lightning and bathes in thunder. It sounds ridiculous, yet the way their voices drop makes you wonder how much is fear and how much is worship. Days stretch into weeks. The terrain changes. Flat plains give way to rolling hills. Rivers glint in the distance, and minarets sprout from the horizon like spears. Your body aches. Your sandals wear thin, but you keep moving. What choice do you have? If you stop, you'll be dragged. If you resist, you'll be beaten. And so, The rhythm continues. March rest. Eat little march again. The closer you get to the capital, the more you sense scale. Roads, widened caravans become frequent soldiers, march past in shining armor. And traders haul silks that smell of places even further away than your village. You feel like a pebble being funneled into the center of a great river, powerless against the current. This isn't just a city you're walking toward. It's the heartbeat of an empire. Finally, one dawn you see it. Rising across the horizon like a mirage is Istanbul, crowned with domes and minarets piercing the sky. Smoke rises in soft spirals. Gulls wheel above the glittering water, and even the guards straighten their backs. The city looks impossibly large, a place where the world seems to begin and end. You, a boy plucked from nowhere, are about to walk straight into its jaws. The first glimpse of Topkapi Palace is like staring at a dream you never asked to have. You shuffle through the city gates, half dazed by the chaos of Istanbul, the fishmongers yelling at sunrise camels, bellowing as they lurch through crowded streets, merchants hawking silk so bright it feels like your eyes might bruise. Then after all that noise and crush, the palace rises ahead, like it belongs to another world entirely. The walls are high and gleaming, edged with towers that look like they're designed to keep secrets in rather than enemies out. Domes glint in the sunlight, each one a silver coin laid upon the sky. Gates carved with verses from the Quran stand open, guarded by men in uniforms so polished you'd think their buttons were hammered from sunlight. You don't need anyone to tell you this is not just a building. This is the center of gravity for everything you've just been dragged into. Your nose catches the smells: incense curling from a brazier, roasted lamb drifting from kitchens hidden deep inside, and the faint metallic tang of polished weapons. The guards march you through courtyards that seem to grow larger the deeper you go. One courtyard has cypresses standing like silent judges. Another is paved with marble so smooth you can see your own dirty reflection staring back. It's like walking into a stage play where every prop has been designed to remind you how small you are. Around you, other boys shuffle nervously, their eyes darting in every direction. Some stare up at the towers as if counting how many windows might hide watchful eyes. Others glance at the janissaries, those elite soldiers who stand like statues, spears glinting. You can almost hear their armor whispering, "This is what you might become if you survive the path ahead." And yet mixed with the awe is fear, because palaces are not just built for beauty. They're built to impress, to intimidate, to control. Even at your young age, you sense it. The Ottomans understood the psychology of power long before modern management consultants packaged it into TED Talks. Domes and gardens here are not just for show. They are instruments carefully tuned to tell you where you stand beneath them. In one corner of the courtyard, you catch sight of older pages boys who came before you. Their uniforms are simple but clean, their posture rigid, their expressions unreadable. Do they feel pity as they watch you stumble in, or smug relief that it's your turn now? You can't tell. What you do know is that they've learned the rules of this place, and soon you'll have to as well. Historians sometimes describe the palace as a city within a city, and you start to see why. Kitchens the size of cathedrals. Storerooms stacked with porcelain from china fountains splashing like laughter in the gardens. Every corner whispers of the empire's reach. Imagine being a villager who had never seen more than a weekly market This is like stepping into the headquarters of the universe. The irony is that while the palace sparkles with riches, you are being led deeper into a system that will strip you of freedom. It's a gilded cage, and like any cage, it's designed to make you forget the sky. The domes may shimmer, but their weight presses down just the same. One of the guards smirks when he sees your wide eyes as if to say, "Yes, boy, this will eat you alive." You wonder not for the first time whether the stories whispered on the road about glory and fortune were just bait. Because right now, standing on polished stone with the Sultan's shadow looming over everything, it feels less like opportunity and more like the start of a test you never volunteered for. This palace doesn't just dazzle at judges. Standing in the courtyard, you feel every glance of the officials cut through you like a blade. Boys are lined up shoulder to shoulder, dust still on their feet from the march, and now every detail is under inspection. Height, posture, even the way you hold your hands is noted as if it will reveal your future. The ritual is silent, but suffocating a marketplace where no one bothers to haggle because the decisions are final. You step forward when called the marble cold under your soles. An official circles you, slowly eyes narrowing the way a merchant examines a prized horse. He grips your arm, tests your shoulders, asks you to open your mouth so he can inspect your teeth. Nothing about this feels human. It's a transaction, and you are the goods. One boy trembles so much he can hardly walk in a straight line. Another tries to look fierce, chin lifted like a soldier. Both are judged in seconds and sent to different fates. The sorting ritual isn't just about strength. They test obedience, attention, and the spark of intelligence. A quick response to a question might save you from hard labor. A careless glance could doom you to it. You sense that these men have done this 100 times. They can tell within minutes who will thrive in the palace school and who will be dismissed to the fields or workshops. For them, your entire childhood is condensed into a few check marks on a parchment. And yet, for all its cruelty, the system has a strange logic. The empire doesn't care about your family's wealth or your village's prestige. It cares only about potential. A shepherd's son may be chosen while a chieftain's boy is waved away. History records how some of these selections changed the empire itself. Sokolu Mehmed Pasha, once a terrified child in a line just like yours, was chosen here before rising to Grand Vizier, effectively ruling alongside sultans. That story lingers like a ghost in the courtyard, proof that humiliation today might translate into unimaginable power tomorrow. The officials' voices are low, their judgment swift. One boy is marked for janissary training, destined to hold a sword instead of a quill. Another, with sharp wit and steady posture, is earmarked for the palace school, where languages and politics are weapons sharper than steel. A third, small and frail, is dismissed entirely, shuffled away, as if unworthy of the empire's time. Watching him vanish, you realize how thin the line is between glory and obscurity. Your own inspection ends before you can process it. A note is made, a gesture flicks, and you're sent to join one of the groups, forming under different banners. You don't know yet what that means, but the weight in your stomach tells you it matters. You're not a boy anymore, not in the eyes of these men. You're material clay, waiting to be molded iron, waiting to be hammered. By the time the ritual concludes, the courtyard is divided into clusters, each group facing a separate destiny. You feel drained, as if part of yourself has been erased. But there is no time to mourn or celebrate. The officials close their ledgers, and the guards gesture you forward. The palace has decided. Your new life begins before you even understand the rules of it. The mornings come earlier than you think possible. A bell clangs before the sun even peeks over the domes, and you scramble from your thin mat half awake, but already expected to stand in order. Life inside the palace school is not about comfort. It is about discipline, and you feel it in every muscle of your body. You are marched to the fountains to wash shivering in the cold water, then lined up for prayer and lessons. Sleepy or not, you learn quickly that hesitation earns you more than a scolding. Your first tasks are simple, almost humiliating. Scrubbing the marble floors until your knuckles sting, polishing copper pots until you can see your anxious reflection, hauling buckets of water back and forth until your arms ache. At first, you tell yourself it's just chores, the kind you did back home. But here the chores are layered with meaning. Obedience is tested, attention to detail is judged, and mistakes are punished with a swiftness that leaves no room for excuses. When the cleaning ends, the memorization begins. Teachers bark verses of the Quran, lines of Persian poetry, and passages of law. You repeat them until your throat burns. At first, it feels impossible. Foreign words pile up like stones in your mind, but the rhythm sinks in. By the end of a week, you can chant entire sections, surprising even yourself. Knowledge here isn't just for show. It is the currency that will decide whether you rise in the palace hierarchy or remain a servant forever. Some of the instructors are terrifying, their eyes scanning for weakness, like hawks spotting rabbits. Others are strangely kind, slipping you advice when no one is listening. Hold your shoulders straighter, one murmurs. The officials watch posture. Another taps your forehead. Learn quickly, speak clearly, and doors will open. These small gestures keep you from feeling completely lost in a sea of rules. What's strange is how you begin to measure yourself against the other boys. The one who scrubs faster, the one who memorizes quicker, the one who dares to ask questions without trembling. You watch them, and a quiet competition brews. In a way, it feels like school. Anywhere else in the world, some rise, some lag behind, some burnout. Only here, the stakes are higher than test scores. A wrong move doesn't mean a bad grade. It means being reassigned, perhaps forever shut out of opportunity. Now and then, you catch yourself thinking of home. The smell of your mother's bread, the rough wool of your father's coat, the way the fields shimmered in the wind. But memory is a dangerous indulgence. The palace has no patience for nostalgia, so you tuck those thoughts away, like contraband hidden under a mat, and focus on the tasks in front of you. Meals are another lesson in obedience. You eat what you are given, often rice, lentils, or bread. Sometimes a sliver of meat, rarely fruit. Talking is restricted. You are expected to finish quickly and return to duties. Hunger never truly disappears. It becomes part of the background, like the echo of footsteps in the long corridors. You begin to understand that the palace doesn't waste luxury on boys who haven't yet proven their worth. By nightfall, exhaustion presses you into the mat again. Your hands are raw, your mind is crowded with lines of text, your back is sore from bending. And still you know tomorrow will be the same. But beneath the fatigue, a strange resilience grows. You realize you are learning to survive not just physically, but mentally. You are shaping yourself to the rhythm of a world that doesn't pause for anyone. When the bell rings the next morning, you no longer stumble as much. You rise faster, recite louder, polish harder. Without meaning to, you're becoming exactly what the system wants, disciplined, alert, and ready to be shaped further. As weeks stretch into months, the routine changes. You're no longer just polishing floors or memorizing verses, you're being shaped into something sharper. Training now branches into different streams, and you sense the palace beginning to sort you once again. Some boys are handed wooden swords, drilled in the basics of combat until their arms quiver. Others are guided into classrooms where tutors hammer out lessons in Arabic, Persian, and Ottoman Turkish. You, like everyone else, live on the edge of both paths, never certain where you'll land. The military drills are brutal. You stand under the scorching sun, feet blistering, while Janissary instructors bark commands that rattle your bones. Marching, wheeling, thrusting, holding formation, every motion repeated until your muscles scream. At first, you can barely hold the practice spear steady, but repetition chisels away weakness. The point isn't simply to make you strong. It's to make you uniform, to weld a line of boys into a single blade. Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to lose your individuality? That's the price you pay here, your own rhythm surrendered to the drumbeat of empire. On other days, the training flips entirely. Instead of sweating in the yard, you're seated cross-legged with ink-stained fingers, reciting legal codes or copying verses onto tablets. Teachers insist you learn the etiquette of bowing, the choreography of serving, the art of keeping your expression neutral even when your mind is racing. It's not enough to be clever. You must also be controlled. The palace values boys who can nod at the right time, laugh at the right joke, and keep secrets buried behind their teeth. Languages become their own battlefield. Tutors rattle off words in Greek, Armenian, and even Latin, demanding you repeat until your tongue obeys. It feels impossible, but then one day, you surprise yourself, blurting out a full sentence without stumbling. That's when you realize the transformation isn't just physical, it's mental. The palace is rewiring you, turning a village boy into someone who can move between worlds, from a soldier's barracks to a scholar's library. Competition sharpens here. Boys who once shared bread now measure themselves against each other in sword drills and recitations. The fastest learner, the strongest fighter, the most obedient page, all are noticed. The instructors don't bother hiding their preferences, and jealousy flickers in the corners of the dormitories at night. You learn that success isn't just about being good, it's about being better than the boy next to you. Occasionally, the shadow of famous graduates looms over you. You hear of Pargal Ibrahim, once a Levi boy, who rose to become Sultan Suleiman's closest friend and Grand Vizier. His story is retold like a legend, both a promise and a warning. He climbed so high that when he eventually fell out of favor, his death shook the empire. Even in triumph, the lesson is clear in this world: power is borrowed, never owned. The drills intensify. You spar until your arms feel detached. You debate until your throat aches. You recite until your mind buzzes. Somewhere in that exhaustion, you glimpse the logic. The Sultan doesn't want ordinary servants. He wants weapons, polished, disciplined, versatile weapons who can serve in the barracks, the court, or the council chamber. And whether you end up wielding a sword or a pen, the training is meant to burn away hesitation. By the end of the year, you barely recognize yourself. Your shoulders are broader, your handwriting steadier, your silence more deliberate. You've learned to endure pain without flinching, to speak when spoken to think 2 steps ahead. And though part of you still aches for the simplicity of your old village life, another part begins to see what the palace is shaping. Not just boys, but the machinery of empire itself. You can feel it in the air, rivalry thick as smoke, every boy watching the others as if tomorrow depends on it. And maybe it does. Whispers travel faster than food in the mess hall. Who slipped in lessons, who caught the tutor's praise, who angered an instructor with sloppy work. In a place like this, gossip is both entertainment and weapon. One careless word can shadow you for weeks, shaping how others see you. The palace is designed to foster this tension. Rewards are public praise in front of everyone, a slightly better portion of food, or the privilege of serving in a more visible role. Punishments are also public lashes, extra duties, or humiliating tasks. You learn quickly that success doesn't only depend on your own effort, but on how well you navigate the shifting moods of those around you. Have you ever noticed how much harder it is to stay calm when someone else is hoping you'll stumble? That's the daily reality here. Rivalries form naturally. A boy from Albania memorizes verses twice as fast as you, and suddenly every teacher holds him up as the model. Another from Bosnia shines in combat drills, and you can hear the envy and the muttering at night. Some try to sabotage rivals, misplacing a book, spilling water on carefully written lines, whispering false stories to instructors. None of it goes unnoticed. The instructors seem to relish the competition, letting it simmer as if conflict sharpens everyone at once. Yet alliances sprout in the cracks. You share bread with the boy beside you, cover for another during chores, whisper encouragement before an exam. These small kindnesses form threads of loyalty, though you never know how strong they'll be under pressure. The palace is like a chessboard where every piece wants to survive, and friendships are gambits that may or may not pay off. The punishment system hovers over all of this. A mistake in recitation might mean hours of kneeling on hard stone. Disobedience could earn you a whipping in front of your peers. You watch boys crumble under the pressure, eyes hollowing out as they learn to obey without thinking. Others harden, carrying themselves with the cold confidence of survivors. Which one will you become? You can't forget that even in these rivalries, the Sultan's presence looms. Everyone knows that boys who excel may be placed closer to him, perhaps even serving in his personal chambers. That carrot dangles in front of you, shining brighter than any fear of punishment. To serve the Sultan directly is to step into both glory and danger, a place where history can be made or unmade in a heartbeat. At night, when the torches dim, you lie awake, listening to the breathing of the boys around you. Some whisper prayers, others curse under their breath, a few simply stare at the ceiling. The dormitory feels less like a place to sleep and more like an arena pause between matches. You realize with a chill that the real contest here isn't in the classroom or the training yard. It's in the quiet calculation of who will endure long enough to rise and who will collapse under the weight of constant comparison. The Sultan's presence is never ordinary. Even when he is nowhere near you, his shadow stretches across the palace like a second set of walls. You hear his name whispered with both awe and dread, as though it is dangerous to say too loudly or too casually. And then one day, you see him. The occasion is formal, a procession through the palace grounds. You are lined up with the other boys, back straight, eyes lowered but not closed. Drums thunder, trumpets pierce the air, and suddenly there he is, robed in silk so heavy it shimmers like water jewels, glinting in the sunlight. He does not walk. He glides, or at least that's how it looks from where you stand. His beard is trimmed to perfection. His turban towers like a crown of fabric, and his gaze sweeps the crowd with the kind of weight that makes you feel naked. In that instant, you understand why men both worship and fear him. The Sultan is not just a man, he is empire embodied. His expression reveals nothing, yet everyone bends to it. Guards stiffen, viziers bow, low servants freeze mid-step. You, trembling, try to keep your breathing steady because you sense that even the smallest misstep could cost dearly. Later, when you serve nearer his chambers, the awe only deepens. The corridors leading to his rooms are hushed carpets muffling every sound. You carry trays of food, pour sherbet into golden cups, simply stand ready with folded hands. Every task feels monumental because his moods are unpredictable. A smile from him could lift you into favor. A frown could erase you. History is littered with examples favorites who rose to astonishing power, then vanished without explanation. You recall hearing about Pargal Ibrahim, once a boy, like you, who became Sultan Suleiman's closest companion and Grand Vizier. For years his influence was unmatched, his word nearly law. And then one evening he was summoned to the palace and never returned. His rise and fall haunt every boy who dares to dream of climbing too high. It is a reminder that the Sultan's favor is both a gift and a trap. Serving near him teaches you subtler lessons. How silence can be more powerful than speech. How timing a gesture perfectly can matter more than strength. How reading a room is as important as reading a book. The Sultan doesn't need to speak for you to know what he wants. His presence radiates command. It's like standing near a fire, warming dangerous impossible to ignore. And yet amid the terror, there is a strange pride. You realize that of all the boys taken, trained, and tested, you are here within reach of the man who rules half the known world. The domes of the city gleam outside, the Bosphorus shimmers, with ships carrying treasures, and you, once a village child, are holding a pitcher in the very room where decisions that reshape continents are made. Of course, pride is a dangerous indulgence. You remind yourself constantly, watch, listen, obey. The Sultan's shadow may open doors, but it also swallows those who forget their place. Paths branch like corridors in this vast palace, and every boy eventually discovers which one will claim him. Some are ushered into the military wing, drilled until their bodies are machines of obedience, destined to join the Janissaries who strike fear across battlefields. You see them march with spears in perfect rhythm, their boots slamming like a single heartbeat, and you wonder if this will be your fate forever, defined by iron discipline and the clash of swords. Others are chosen for scholarship, their days spent bent over manuscripts in the palace libraries. They study law, theology, astronomy, and languages, voices whispering late into the night as they wrestle with knowledge brought from Baghdad, Cairo, or even Europe. These boys may one day advise viziers, draft decrees, or sit in council chambers where maps of the world are spread like chessboards. Their power will be wielded through words and ink rather than steel. And then there are those who drift downward, never noticed by tutors or commanders, absorbed into kitchens, stables, or menial service. They work hard, fade into the background, and are rarely mentioned again. For every boy who rises, dozens vanish into anonymity. The palace system is efficient, but it is also merciless. It spits out glory and ruin in equal measure, and you never know which side you'll land on until the decision is already made. You think of the legends whispered by the instructors, Sokolu Mehmed Pasha, who once scrubbed floors like you climbed all the way to Grand Vizier, under three sultans shaping policy for decades. Or Sinan the architect trained through the system, who designed mosques so magnificent they still dominate Istanbul's skyline. Their stories are lanterns in the dark, proof that the road from servitude to greatness is possible. But alongside them are the unspoken masses, the boys who never became more than shadows in the palace corridors. The pressure sharpens every day. One mistake in training, one failure in lessons, and you could be reassigned to a lesser path. That uncertainty gnaws at you more than hunger or punishment. It teaches you to stay vigilant, to measure every word before you speak it, to push harder than your body wants to. Have you noticed how ambition can taste both sweet and bitter? That's the flavor of life here, half hope, half dread. Occasionally, you catch glimpses of boys chosen for special duties. They walk differently, shoulders squared, as though destiny has already tapped them on the shoulder. You can't help but envy them, but you also know the risks. The higher they climb, the further they can fall. The story of Ibrahim Pasha still lingers in your mind, a reminder that favor is fickle and fortune can turn overnight. And so, you keep working, eyes fixed on the uncertain road ahead. You know now that the palace is not just a place, it's a machine, grinding endlessly, producing generals, scholars, and servants while discarding the rest. You are caught inside it, one more cog trying to spin fast enough to avoid being replaced. The question that whispers in the back of your mind isn't whether the system works, it's whether you'll survive long enough to find out where your path leads. You were taken as a child, and now standing in the quiet of the palace gardens, you begin to feel the weight of everything that's happened. The domes gleam in the distance, the Bosphorus sparkles like a sheet of silver, and yet your thoughts turn not to the empire's grandeur, but to the life stolen long ago. The memory of your village feels faint, almost dreamlike, your mother's voice calling you in for supper, the smell of earth after rain, the simple rhythm of a day that belonged to you. Here in the palace, time has never been yours. The palace has given you a strange kind of family. Boys who once wept beside you on the road have grown into rivals, allies, sometimes even brothers in arms. You've shared bread with them, fought beside them, whispered fears in the dark. Some have risen high, wearing silks and giving orders. Others have vanished, reassigned to kitchens, or sent off to wars they may not return from. Together, you've lived inside this gilded cage, bound not by blood, but by the shared knowledge that you were chosen without choosing. There are nights when you wonder what it means to belong. Are you Ottoman, now molded by language, faith, and training? Or are you still the boy who once chased goats across a hillside far away? The palace insists that you are reborn here, stripped of past ties, loyal only to the Sultan. But in the quiet moments, when no one is watching, you feel the old self, stirring the echo of the child your family lost. History shows that many boys did rise beyond imagination. Viziers, generals, even trusted advisors whose words could steer empires. Their portraits still hang in halls, their names etched into the stones of mosques and bridges. Yet behind every triumph was the same story you carry: a child, taken, reshaped, remade. Glory came, yes, but always with the price of a life rewritten. Would you call it fortune or theft? That question haunts you as much as it haunts historians today. For some, the Dev Shirmi system was a ladder out of obscurity. For others, it was a chain that dragged them away from everything they were. Both truths live inside you. The palace gardens are quiet now, cypresses swaying, fountains whispering. You stand there older, sharper no longer, the trembling child who first arrived. But even with all you've learned, the languages, the discipline, the secrets of power, you still feel tug of a question that has no simple answer. Did you ever truly belong here? Or have you always been a guest in someone else's story? You've walked in the dust of boys taken, felt the echo of their footsteps through the courtyards of Topkapi, and sensed how the palace shaped them into instruments of empire. But what about the figure at the center of all this gravity, the man for whom the boys were trained? The shadow that stretched over every corridor. To understand the system fully, you have to step into his sandals. So let's shift the gaze. Instead of the anxious eyes of children, imagine the world through the calm, calculating perspective of the Sultan himself, ruling an empire from dawn until the final call of night. Power doesn't let you sleep in. Before dawn, when most of the empire is still snoring under wool blankets, you are already awake, stirred by the shuffle of eunuchs outside your chamber and the low hum of prayers drifting through marble corridors. The air is cool, the kind that makes you want to pull the covers tighter, but you don't. You're the Sultan, and even your first yawn is part of statecraft. The empire expects discipline, not drowsiness. You lie beneath a canopy embroidered with gold thread, heavy silks, weighing down like a reminder of responsibility more than comfort. Attendants hover nearby, watching for the slightest stir. Privacy. That's a luxury no ruler here enjoys. If you've ever shared a house with family who always seem to be listening outside your door, imagine that multiplied by a dozen men with shaved heads and sharp eyes. The first sounds of the palace carry in the thud of sandals on polished stone, the faint creak of gates, the echo of a distant muezzin's call. This is Istanbul's heartbeat pulsing right into your chamber. By rising early, you show that you are in rhythm with it, never behind. Ottoman sultans were expected to embody not just personal habits, but the discipline of an entire state. Even the way you open your eyes is political. Your first gesture is not toward food or luxury, but toward devotion. You rise slowly, attendants ready with slippers and robes, and prepare for the Fajr prayer. A sultan who misses prayers risks more than divine disappointment. He risks whispers that he has grown careless, that his soul is not aligned with heaven. And whispers in a palace travel faster than arrows on the battlefield. Think of Suleiman the Magnificent, the Sultan, whose reign became the very symbol of Ottoman glory. Chroniclers wrote of his strict morning discipline, his balance of faith and rule. Even in stories centuries later, the image of him rising before dawn carries weight, not just a man stretching awake, but an emperor embodying devotion for an empire stretching across 3 continents. The chamber itself reflects power as much as you do. Carved wooden panels gleam under lamplight carpets from Persia, soften the cold floor. An incense smoke curls slowly in the half-light. To anyone else, it looks like unimaginable luxury. To you, it is simply the stage you wake upon a theater where every glance and every movement has meaning. Have you ever felt like you had to perform first thing in the morning, smile at coworkers, answer messages before coffee? For the Sultan, that performance never pauses, not even when the rest of the city is still dreaming. Outside, the Topkapi Palace stirs like a living beast. Kitchens lighting fires, guards shifting at their posts, clerks preparing scrolls. The empire is awake because you are awake. And as you step into the day's first hour, silk robe Swishing softly, you know that your morning has already been observed, judged, and recorded. From here, the body must follow where the spirit has begun. Bathing and grooming come next, a ritual less about vanity and more about embodying the empire's perfection. The marble floor chills your feet as attendants guide you toward the hammam, the private baths reserved for the ruler of half the known world. Steam curls through the corridors, clinging to the carved stone like a ghostly curtain, and the faint scent of rosewater lingers in the air. Bathing, for an Ottoman sultan, is not just about cleanliness. It is ceremony, preparation, and subtle performance. You aren't merely washing away sleep. You are refreshing the image of the empire itself. The hammam glitters with polished tiles, turquoise and white patterns dancing in the lamplight. You sink into a basin of warm water, while eunuchs and bath attendants move quietly around you. Some scrub your arms with rough mitts, removing the faintest trace of dust or fatigue. Others pour warm water in steady streams, turning the bath to a rhythm of sound and comfort. If you've ever stood under a hot shower after a long day and felt human again, imagine that sensation multiplied by the grandeur of marble halls and a team whose sole job is to make sure you emerge glowing. Soaps and oils are carefully chosen. Olive oil soap to soften rose and sandalwood oils to perfume even ambergris. Yes, that rare and strange waxy substance from the sea used for its exotic scent. To smell of wealth was as important as looking the part. After all, you weren't simply a man. You were a symbol, and symbols must dazzle all the senses. The ritual grooming continues with the beard. Ottoman sultans were judged by their beards as much as by their crowns. Too unkempt, and you looked weak. Too styled, and you looked vain. Attendants trimmed and shaped with precision the goal. Always dignity, strength without arrogance. Records describe Sultan Murad IV as fiercely disciplined, inspecting not only soldiers' weapons, but also his own appearance with military sharpness. To him, grooming was no triviality. It was an extension of authority. Hair nails, even the faintest details, are attended to. Eyebrows, smooth fingernails cleaned, and shaped skin rubbed with fragrant balms. Each part of you polished until the man in the mirror is not just flesh and bone, but the idealized face of empire. Think of how modern leaders step onto stages with every hair in place, every suit perfectly fitted. The Sultan had the same obligation, only his stage was the world's largest city, and his audience numbered in millions. And yet there is comfort here. The warmth of water loosens your muscles. The scented oils cling gently to your skin. The hum of attendants creates a cocoon of order. For a brief moment, the weight of politics slips away. No viziers, no petitions, no rival courts, just the simple act of being cared for human amidst the marble grandeur. But even that moment is brief, because luxury in the palace is never just luxury. It is responsibility polished into ritual. You rise from the bath, wrapped in fresh linen attendants, moving with choreographed precision to dry and robe you. Already trays of garments await silks, folded with military neatness, jewels glinting under the lamplight. The act of bathing may be done, but the next ritual transforms you further into a living emblem wrapped in layers of authority. The pile of garments waiting for you isn't clothing, it's armor of another kind. Layers of silk, velvet, and brocade are not chosen for comfort, but for symbolism. Each fold, each stitch, each jewel sewn into fabric reminds everyone, including yourself, that you are not just a man waking up. You are the Sultan, the empire woven into flesh. Attendants move in silence as they help you dress. First comes the inner robe, plain silk, soft enough to cling to the skin, but invisible beneath the outer layers. Then heavier garments, caftans dyed in deep reds, greens, or blues, depending on the occasion. Patterns aren't random tulips, and cypresses woven into fabric symbolize eternal life and strength. Gold thread glimmers in the lamplight, catching every movement like a quiet announcement of power. Imagine slipping into a modern business suit where the color of your tie secretly signals your rank alliances and ambitions. That's exactly what this wardrobe does, only on a grander, more dangerous scale. The turban is the crowning detail. Ottoman turbans weren't simple wrappings, but towering constructions of fabric, sometimes using yards upon yards of white muslin. The style of your turban speaks louder than words. A broader wrap suggests grandeur, a taller height signals majesty, and the jewel-encrusted aigrette pinned to it declares wealth. A crooked turban that could inspire gossip by breakfast. Think of paparazzi photos today, dissecting the way a president buttons a jacket. In the palace, scrutiny was even harsher. Jewelry follows rings heavy with emeralds and rubies, gifts from foreign rulers or spoils of conquest, each stone carrying stories of battles fought and treaties signed. Your sword belt, too, is fitted not just weaponry, but decoration, an echo of the empire's martial roots, polished and gleaming, though it may never leave its sheath. Attendants step back, inspecting their work, like artists judging a painting. One smooths a fold, another adjusts the weight of a sleeve, a third ensures the turban gleams just so in the morning light. You remain still, a canvas transformed into empire. Even your silence is part of the ritual. Why speak when every thread already declares what words cannot? History remembers how clothing was wielded as power. Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent once shocked foreign ambassadors by changing robes multiple times in a single day, each more dazzling than the last, as if to remind them that his wealth was inexhaustible. His wardrobe became diplomacy, his appearance a weapon sharper than steel. And of course, there's humor buried in all this ceremony. Imagine layering thick brocade in Istanbul's sweltering summer heat, pretending not to sweat while everyone else is melting. Luxury is heavy literally. Beneath the jewels and silks, you are still human, still breathing under the weight of fabric chosen more for meaning than comfort. But that's the point, you endure it, because the empire needs you to look effortless. Now, robed and jeweled, you step into the corridor. The marble gleams, eunuchs bow low, and the air itself seems to shift, as if acknowledging that the Sultan has fully arrived. But before the affairs of state can begin, spirit must guide the body, and prayers must come before power. One wrong prayer at dawn could spark more whispers than 10 wrong decisions in council. Faith is the backbone of empire, and before you weigh taxes, hear petitions, or scold a vizier for sloppy paperwork, you must bow your head and recite words older than your dynasty. You step into the private prayer chamber, smaller than the audience halls, yet more powerful in its silence. Lamps flicker against calligraphy-laced walls, verses from the Quran wrapping around you like invisible armor. The carpets beneath your feet are soft, woven in Anatolia by hands that will never meet you, yet somehow carry you in devotion. You kneel, press your forehead to the ground, and for a moment the empire fades. This is the Fajr prayer, the day's first anchor. For a sultan, it's not simply about piety, it's about proving alignment with heaven. After all, you are not only ruler by blood, you are ruler by divine approval, or so the court insists. Skip a prayer, and someone will note it. Skip too many, and someone will spread rumors. The Sultan has grown careless. Perhaps his blessing has waned. Can you imagine how in modern politics, one missed handshake can spiral into headlines? Here missing prayer was worse. It wasn't just optics. It was cosmic. Some sultans were remembered for their devotion. Suleiman the Magnificent often prayed before council meetings, reminding his viziers that law and faith were inseparable. Others, like Selim II, faced criticism for indulgence, their religiosity questioned in hushed tones. History proves that prayer was never only between you and God. It was between you, God, and every rival, watching for cracks in your armor. As you murmur verses, attendants remain at the edges of the chamber, heads bowed, careful not to breathe too loudly. Even silence here is part of ritual. When you rise, smoothing the folds of your robe, the chamber feels different. The quiet has worked its way into your bones, a calm before the storm of politics. Prayer is followed by a few moments of stillness, sometimes reading verses, sometimes listening to an imam. These are not long, drawn-out sessions. The Sultan's day must move quickly, yet this pause is non-negotiable. To rule millions, you must show you can first rule yourself. And so, with the first light of dawn slipping into the chamber, your voice still echoes faintly in the carved dome above. You've prayed not just as a man, but as a symbol. The empire is vast, but it begins here with a whispered verse in a quiet room. When you leave, attendants fall in step. Already, the scents of honey and bread drift in from the kitchens. Because devotion may steady the spirit, but breakfast steadies everything else. Breakfast, for a sultan, isn't just food. It's ceremony laid on golden trays. The smell of warm bread drifts in, first followed by honey-clotted cream, and bowls of fruit so polished they look staged for a painting. Silver dishes carry olives, dates, and cheeses, while sherbets, chilled with snow, from distant mountains gleam like jewels in crystal cups. You sit cross-legged on low cushions, attendants moving quietly around you, and the meal begins not with appetite, but with ritual. Every bite matters. Bread must be torn gracefully, not wolfed down like a soldier in camp. Honey is spooned with silver, never fingers. Even the way you sip sherbet carries weight. A clumsy spill could be noted by watchful eyes. Have you ever been at a formal dinner where you worried about which fork to use? Now imagine that dinner every morning. Only the fork mistake might turn into gossip about the Sultan's lack of refinement. The food itself reflects empire. Grapes from Anatolia, figs from Syria, saffron from Persia, rice from Egypt, all arriving by caravan and ship, all reminding you that your reach stretches far beyond these palace walls. Every fruit is a conquest, every spice a silent envoy. As you chew, you taste geography. History tells us sultans sometimes invited foreign ambassadors to witness their meals, not to eat with them, but to watch the abundance. A table groaning with delicacies was its own form of diplomacy, proof that the empire had wealth to spare. When Mehmed II dined after conquering Constantinople, his meals became a statement the city's riches had become his breakfast. But meals also carried subtle risks. Overindulgence could be frowned upon. Too much restraint could seem joyless. Balance was the key. Eat enough to show vitality, not so much to suggest gluttony. And always there was the shadow of poison. Food tasters sampled each dish before it reached your lips, their nervous glances reminding you that not everyone in the palace wished you well. Can you imagine eating your morning toast, knowing someone had to test it first? That was daily reality here. The atmosphere at breakfast isn't exactly lively. Attendants hover. Eunuchs stand watch, but conversation is limited. This isn't a family kitchen with chatter over coffee. It's closer to a ritual stage. Still, you notice small things. The careful way a servant sets down a dish, the faint tremor in an attendant's hands, the shuffle of a eunuch exchanging a glance. Even breakfast is information if you know how to read it. And of course, you don't linger. A sultan doesn't have the luxury of long, lazy meals. As soon as the last bite is taken, linens are cleared, trays whisked away, and the rhythm of duty resumes. Your body may be fed, but your mind must now feed on politics. The next chamber awaits the council hall, where viziers shuffle scrolls and argue over matters ranging from taxes to war. The council hall feels less like a room and more like a stage where everyone rehearses their best version of loyalty. Marble pillars rise tall carpets, muffle footsteps, and at the far end, you sit on a cushioned throne, raised just high enough to remind everyone where power flows from. Viziers shuffle in with scrolls tucked under their arms, turbans wound, tall eyes sharp. They bow low, but you already know each one is rehearsing speeches in his head, weighing words like coins. The Grand Vizier speaks first. He is both servant and surrogate, the man who runs the empire's machinery when you choose not to. Today, he might report on taxes from Egypt troop movements in the Balkans or complaints from restless janissaries. His voice is steady, but his eyes flicker now and then, gauging your mood. If you frown, he pivots. If you nod, he presses forward. Have you ever watched someone at work try to read the boss's face before finishing a sentence? That same nervous calculation fills this chamber, only the stakes are millions of lives. Behind him, other viziers present their reports. Some argue, others mutter agreement. A few try to outshine the rest. Every petition has layers. A complaint about grain is really about trade routes. A request for soldiers is really about influence. You listen not only to what is said, but to what is left unsaid. Silence here is often the loudest argument. The Divan Humayun. This imperial council is designed to project order, but beneath the calm lies constant rivalry. Viziers jostle for your approval, offering advice that always carries a shadow of self-interest. You lean back on cushions, coffee steaming in a silver cup beside you, and let them perform. The empire is vast, but in this moment it narrows to a handful of men trying to bend it with words. Some sultans relish debate. Suleiman the Magnificent, nicknamed the Lawgiver, often listened for hours, weighing each point before speaking with precision. Others, like Selim the Grim, were less patient, known to end arguments with sharp decrees or sharper punishments. Either way, the council's theater always ended the same. The Sultan's word closed the curtain. Attendants stand at the edges, silent, recording decisions on scrolls that will ripple outward to governors, soldiers, and peasants across continents. A nod here could raise taxes in Damascus. A frown there could alter borders in Hungary. From this hall, the empire breathes its orders. But it is not all stern business. Occasionally a vizier slips in a compliment, disguised as a report, praising the order of the palace, the brilliance of past campaigns, the wisdom of your decrees. It's flattery, of course, but carefully measured. Too much, and it reeks of desperation. Too little, and it risks seeming cold. You sip your coffee, hiding a smile. Human nature hasn't changed much. Have you ever sat through a meeting where praise for the boss somehow took up more time than the actual agenda. The session winds on papers, rustled tempers flare and settle. Finally, when enough has been said, or when you simply decide enough is enough, you rise. The viziers bow deeply, scrolls clutched tighter, knowing their words today may shape their fortunes tomorrow. From politics of state, the day shifts to politics of people. Beyond the council hall, the palace opens its gates to petitioners, and it is there that you step next, where justice is expected to be seen as much as served. Justice is the sharpest jewel in a sultan's crown. One unfair judgment can spark revolts. One display of fairness can silence critics for years. One misstep here could undo the careful image built by robes, prayers, and council meetings. You move to the public audience chamber, where the air feels heavier, charged with expectation. The chamber is vast, yet designed so that voices echo clearly. Peasants, merchants, soldiers, and even minor nobles may kneel here waiting for their turn to speak. Their cases have already been sifted by officials, but the symbolism matters. The Sultan listens, the Sultan sees. The line between ruler and judged must blur into one image of authority tempered by mercy. Petitioners shuffle forward, each bowing low before daring to speak. One pleads about unfair taxes, another complains of a corrupt governor, another asks for help with a family dispute. To modern ears, it might sound trivial for an emperor to hear about land boundaries or stolen goats. But in this system, the Sultan's role as supreme judge was critical. By lowering himself to hear the smallest grievances, he raised himself as the empire's guardian of justice. Coffee is set beside you, its steam curling like a clock measuring patience. You listen carefully, though sometimes the performance of listening is as important as the decision itself. A raised eyebrow, a nod, even silence, all are part of the theater. Officials nearby record your judgments in neat Ottoman script, ready to ripple out into decrees that will travel faster than caravans. History remembers sultans who used these sessions to burnish their image. Mehmed II, conqueror of Constantinople, was noted for personally inspecting complaints, showing himself as both conqueror and caretaker. Suleiman, too, earned the title Kanuni, the lawgiver, by ensuring his rulings were seen as consistent even when harsh. People feared the Sultan, yes, but they also trusted him to cut through corruption when no one else dared. The trick is balance. Too lenient and viziers whisper, "You are soft." Too strict, and the people mutter about tyranny. Every judgment becomes a performance where law, mercy, and politics intertwine. Have you ever sat as the referee of an argument between friends, knowing no matter what you say, someone will glare at you? Multiply that by millions of subjects, and you understand the weight on your shoulders here. Some petitioners are genuine. Others are planted, used by officials to test your mood or push an agenda. You know this. The palace is a nest of schemes, and even the simplest story might be bait. But you play the part, flawlessly handing down judgments with calm authority, each word measured to show fairness without weakness. When the last petitioner bows out, the chamber empties, leaving only echoes and the fading scent of coffee. Justice has been served, or at least performed. Your subjects will carry these stories back to bazaars and mosques, spreading the image of a ruler who listens. From the voices of peasants and princes, your ears now turn to the clash of drums and boots. Beyond the chamber waits another duty, the inspection of troops, where loyalty is measured not in words, but in steel and posture. The sound of drums rolls across the courtyards before you even step outside. Boots stamp in rhythm, Janissary voices rumble in unison, and the smell of oiled muskets and leather straps fills the air. If the council chamber is words, this space is steel. The soldiers assembled here are not just your protectors, they are the spine of the empire, the ones who turn decrees into reality. And now they wait for you to inspect them. Eyes forward, backs straight, hands gripping weapons polished to gleam. You stride onto the parade ground, attendants trailing behind, and the entire formation shifts. Hundreds of men move as one, like a living machine, suddenly tightening its gears. The Janissaries bow, slightly but not too much. Their pride is part of their loyalty. You walk slowly along the rows, robes brushing against the stone, your gaze sharp. This isn't a parade for show, it's a test. Are the muskets clean? Are the uniforms neat? Do their eyes burn with discipline, or do they wander nervously? A single careless soldier could signal cracks in the Empire's armor. These inspections are part ritual, part surveillance. You don't speak often, but every pause, every glance is noted. A nod from you might send relief rippling down the line. A frown might keep a janissary awake all night. Have you ever had a teacher stop beside your desk staring silently at your unfinished homework? That same nervous energy hums here, only the stakes are life, death, and loyalty to the throne. The janissaries, of course, are no ordinary soldiers. Taken young, through the Devshirme system, trained with iron discipline, they live as both elite guards and political players. You know well, the irony, they are your protectors, yet they are also the one group in the empire that could rise against you. History remembers moments when janissaries overthrew sultans, even murdering them in these very grounds. So this inspection is not simply you studying them, it is them studying you. Do you look strong? Do you look decisive? Do you look like a man worth obeying? Suleiman the Magnificent again mastered this performance. Chroniclers describe how he rode before the janissaries in gleaming armor, radiating command without needing words. His presence alone quelled doubts his gaze enough to silence grumbling. Others less disciplined found inspections more dangerous. Sultan Osman Thet, young and ambitious, tried to reform the core and paid with his life when the janissaries turned on him. His story lingers as a warning. You must inspire loyalty without provoking rebellion. You pause before a captain studying his sword, nodding as he bows. The crowd of soldiers remains still, but tension crackles in the air. Loyalty is not built on fear alone. It is built on respect earned in these silent exchanges. You move on each step, measured each breath, deliberate until at last the inspection ends with a final salute. The drums beat louder, a ceremonial conclusion, and the troops disperse. You return through arched gateways, the echo of boots fading behind you. Steel and discipline have been measured, at least for today. Now within the palace walls again, your steps carry you toward quieter courtyards where cypresses sway and fountains murmur. Soldiers may guard your throne, but secrets and whispers thrive in the gardens waiting for your ear. The gardens are where the empire pretends to breathe. Cypress trees rise in orderly rows, fountains sparkle under sunlight, and roses bloom in colors so vivid they look painted. On the surface, it is peace, a sanctuary from drums, councils, and endless reports. But you know better. Gardens in the palace are never only for strolling. They are corridors of whispers, stages of quiet politics, and sometimes traps softened by birdsong. You walk slowly along marble paths, attendants a respectful distance behind. The smell of jasmine drifts through the air, mingling with the sound of water trickling from carved fountains. To visitors, the Topkapi Gardens are proof of luxury. To you, they are tools. When foreign ambassadors are escorted here, the abundance of tulips and exotic plants sends a message if this is how casually the Sultan's gardens flourish. Imagine the wealth hidden deeper within. A flower bed is never just a flower bed. It's propaganda rooted in soil. Tulips especially carry weight. Long before they reached Dutch painters, tulips were the Ottoman pride, cultivated into endless varieties admired like jewels. To stroll among them, as Sultan, is to embody refinement, a ruler who controls not only armies, but beauty itself. Have you ever noticed how CEOs today brag about their golf courses or vineyards? The principle is the same. The garden says, I have so much power, I can afford to make nature itself bow to me. But the gardens also hum with intrigue. Eunuchs hover near shaded alcoves. Messengers slip notes between branches. Concubines walk in small groups, their laughter light, but their eyes sharp. Every bench, every shaded pavilion could host a conversation that tilts the empire. You keep your expression calm, but your ears are open. The rustle of leaves often carries more important news than the loudest vizier in council. History remembers how palace gardens became theaters of politics. During Suleiman's reign, ambassadors from Venice and France often reported on chance meetings in these green spaces, where a casual stroll with a vizier could turn into an unofficial negotiation. The Sultan didn't need to sit in a throne room to control diplomacy. He could do it under a cypress tree with a cup of sherbet in hand. And yet, for all the whispers, there are moments of genuine calm. You pause by a pool where koi glide lazily beneath the water's surface, their colors flashing gold and silver. The sound of a fountain masks the distant noise of the city beyond the walls. You breathe deeply, almost forgetting the weight of your robes. Almost. Even here, serenity is brief. A servant approaches with a tray of pomegranate juice, bowing low, reminding you that refreshment is another ritual. You sip slowly, watching the red liquid catch the light, sweet tart, refreshing, but also symbolic, the many seeds of the fruit mirroring the many provinces of your empire, all contained within one skin. To hold the glass is to hold a metaphor. The gardens, then, are not an escape, but another stage. Here you perform leisure display, wealth, listen for secrets, and remind everyone that even in repose, the Sultan's presence is power. And from these shaded paths, your steps lead toward silken chambers, where another realm of politics waits the harem, where beauty, intimacy, and danger share the same breath. The harem is the most mysterious room in the empire. Outsiders whisper about silks, jewels, and endless pleasures, but you know better. It is a chamber of politics disguised as intimacy. One misstep here could end a dynasty faster than a battle lost on the frontier. You step through carved wooden doors into a world drenched in color. Carpets spread like woven gardens. Lamps throw amber light across domed ceilings, and the air is heavy with rose and musk. Eunuchs bow as you pass, their eyes lowered, their silence absolute. The women of the harem wait deeper, within some laughing softly, others whispering, all trained to seem casual, though each moment is measured. Your visit is not simple pleasure. Every interaction is a negotiation. Concubines and consorts are more than companions. They are future mothers of princes, ties to powerful families, and players in the empire's endless game of succession. A smile here can secure loyalty. A frown there can plant panic. Imagine stepping into a family dinner where every glance decide inheritance, except the inheritance here is an empire. The Valide Sultan, your mother, if she lives, rules these chambers with iron and velvet. Her approval or disapproval shapes everything. Many sultans discovered that true control of the empire began not in the council hall, but in their mother's apartments. Kösem Sultan, for instance, wielded such influence in the 17th century that her words shaped foreign policy, all while framed as guidance to her son. To rule the harem is to rule the rulers. Concubines are trained in music, poetry, and etiquette, their talents displayed like polished gems. But behind every performance is ambition. To catch your eye is to change their fate. To bear a son is to step into history. Yet jealousy coils in every corner. Whispers rise, alliances form, and beauty becomes as dangerous as steel. You sip sherbet, feigning ease, while your mind measures each word, each gesture. To you, the harem is both sanctuary and battlefield. Sanctuary, because here you can laugh, listen to songs, and let the weight of the empire slip for a moment. Battlefield, because every smile hides calculation, and every rival faction knows the harem is where dynasties are born and destroyed. The executioner may wait in the courtyard, but the true blade often falls here, sharpened by whispers in silk. Sultans handled this balance differently. Some, like Suleiman, elevated one-woman Hurrem Sultan, above all others, scandalizing tradition, yet securing fierce loyalty. Others, like Ibrahim III, drowned in excess, letting the harem swallow discipline. History remembers both paths and not kindly. You recline on cushions, musicians plucking lutes, dancers moving in slow, practiced rhythm. It looks like indulgence, but you know the truth. Every note, every step, every coy glance is a bid for influence. You smile faintly, letting them wonder who has truly caught your attention. And as the evening deepens, lamps glowing softer, you rise. The harem fades behind you, its whispers lingering, its politics unresolved. Ahead waits another ritual less dangerous, but no less revealing, the languid afternoons of poetry, music, and gossip that keep the palace humming. Afternoons in the palace do not drift quietly. They lounge, sprawl, and sparkle with words, music, and soft performances. You recline on cushions in a divan chamber, sunlight filtering through lattice windows, patterns of light and shadow playing across the floor. Attendants bring trays of coffee and sherbet, the sweet bitterness of one balancing the cool fruitiness of the other. It looks like leisure, but like everything in the palace, leisure here has layers. Poets arrive first, bowing low scrolls, clutched like treasures. They recite verses that weave praise of your reign with metaphors of gardens, stars, and seas. Some of it is sincere. Much of it is flattery, disguised as artistry. You sip your coffee, listening with half a smile. Have you ever had a colleague butter you up with compliments so sugary you could almost feel the cavities forming? That's what these poems are, only embroidered with calligraphy and tradition. Musicians follow, plucking lutes, striking tambourines, or coaxing long notes from reed flutes. Their rhythms ripple through the chamber, a reminder that the empire is as much about harmony as it is about power. The melodies are carefully chosen, soothing when calm is needed, triumphant when strength must be displayed, mournful when the court needs a reminder of fragility. You hear the notes, but you also hear the message beneath them. And then gossip drifts in like smoke. Courtiers lower their voices, sharing news from the city merchants, complaining of taxes, rumors of unrest in distant provinces, whispers about which vizier stumbled in council. This isn't idle chatter. it is another kind of intelligence. You learn as much from casual stories here as from formal reports in the council chamber. It's like scrolling through headlines today, part truth, part exaggeration, but useful if you know how to sift. History shows how vital these afternoons could be. Poets who impressed often secured patronage for life. Musicians could rise to fame across the empire, and even a witty remark overheard at the right moment might influence a sultan's decision later. For example, Baki, one of the greatest Ottoman poets, enjoyed the patronage of Suleiman the Magnificent after dazzling him with verses. Leisure in this sense was not wasted time. It was another arena for influence. Your attendants keep the cups, filled cushions, fluffed incense burning. The chamber buzzes with the low hum of voices, laughter, the strum of strings, the shuffle of feet. Some days, the atmosphere feels light like an oasis between morning duties and evening feasts. Other days, it feels heavier, as if every smile hides a question, every joke hides a warning. You've learned to let it all flow around you, catching what matters, ignoring what doesn't. For the audience, you seem relaxed, an emperor at ease. But inside, you are taking notes, filing away who flatters too much, who hesitates too long, who seems to know a little too much about matters they shouldn't. Even the most languid afternoon is a map of loyalty and intrigue if you read it carefully. As shadows lengthen and the music fades, attendants announce preparations beyond the palace walls. It is time for a different performance entirely, the hunt, where you trade cushions for saddle and silks for steel. The scent of horses reaches you before the courtyard comes into view. Leather saddles, polished bridles, and the faint musk of stables mingle in the air. Afternoon sunlight glints off harnesses as grooms lead out your favorite stallion, its black coat gleaming like poured ink. The hunt is not leisure for a sultan. It is theater on horseback, a moving stage, where strength, skill, and majesty must all ride together. You mount with ease, attendants steadying the stirrups, and the courtyard erupts with activity. Falcons perch on gloved fists, hounds strain against leashes, and nobles adjust their own saddles, eager to be seen alongside you. The janissaries who accompany you stand taller than usual, muskets slung across their backs, knowing this too is a performance of loyalty. The empire may be run from marble halls, but here in the open fields, power is measured in muscle and precision. The procession leaves the palace hooves, striking cobblestones, banners fluttering overhead. Citizens glimpse you from the streets, bowing as the cavalcade passes. Even this departure is symbolic. The people must see their sultan not as a cloistered figure behind walls, but as a living embodiment of vigor and command. Have you noticed how modern leaders jog for cameras or pose in sports settings to prove vitality? The hunt was the Ottoman equivalent, except with falcon swords and the prestige of empire in every movement. Out in the fields beyond Istanbul, the pace quickens. Hawks are unhooded, their eyes sharp wings twitching with anticipation. Dogs are released, bounding through grass with fierce energy. You lean forward in the saddle, the stallion surging beneath you, wind cutting against your robe. For a brief moment, you are not weighed down by scrolls, prayers, or council debates. You are motion itself, ruler of the land, hunter in command of nature's fiercest allies. When the falcon launches, it is a blur against the sky, arrowing toward its prey. Attendants cry out, hounds leap, and the thrill of the chase pulses through the air. You follow, heart pounding, not because you need food, the palace kitchens overflow, but because the hunt proves dominance over animals, over land, over life itself. Every successful strike is another reminder that you are master of both empire and wilderness. Sultans were remembered for these hunts. Murad IV, fierce and uncompromising, was known for his stamina on horseback riding long hours to prove his strength. Suleiman too saw the hunt as both recreation and ritual, a way to embody balance between war and peace. These stories passed into legend, showing subjects and rivals alike that the Sultan was no soft figure draped in silk, but a warrior still. The hunt ends with trophies, displayed birds, hares, perhaps even a stag, arranged not for consumption, but for spectacle. You dismount attendants, rushing to wipe sweat from your brow, servants presenting water in golden cups. The animals will be sent to the kitchens, but the real quarry today was image the Sultan as strong, capable, unshaken. Evening draws in shadows, lengthening across the fields. You ride back to the palace falcons, hooded once more, dogs panting, the cavalcade slowing as torches are lit along the walls. Inside the kitchens blaze with activity, preparing not just food, but a feast fit to remind every guest, ally, and rival of the empire's glory. Feast is the empire's most edible performance. By the time you return from the hunt, the kitchens of Topkapi are already in frenzy, hundreds of cooks and scullions moving like an army of their own. Fires roar, cauldrons, bubble knives flash against cutting boards. The sheer size of the palace kitchens is staggering, some estimates say. Over 1,000 staff work there, feeding not only you, but viziers, guards, and guests. Tonight, though, the spotlight is on your table. You enter the banquet hall, beneath domed ceilings, painted with golden vines. Long tables stretch endlessly, though you yourself dine from a smaller, more elevated setting, so all eyes remain on you. Attendants glide in with trays carried on their shoulders, silver lids lifted with a flourish to reveal each dish. Stews rich with lamb and spices, rice pilafs, jeweled with raisins and almonds, roasted birds lacquered with honey sherbets in crystalline cups, sparkling with snow gathered from distant mountains. The food is delicious, yes, but it is also a message the empire feeds its ruler with the bounty of 3 continents. The ceremony of eating is deliberate. You taste slowly, allowing each flavor to register with both palate and audience. A sultan who eats too quickly appears greedy. One who barely eats risks looking frail. Balance is everything. Have you ever sat at a wedding table, careful how you hold your fork because distant relatives are watching? Imagine that, but with ambassadors from Venice, envoys from Persia, and half the court waiting to interpret your appetite. The guests, too, play their roles. Viziers exchange polite compliments. Poets slip in, verses praising your hunt. Foreign envoys marvel at the abundance. No one is here to fill their stomachs. They're here to witness yours. If the Sultan is well fed and calm, the empire seems steady. If he frowns at a dish or pushes it away, whispers ripple instantly. Was it poisoned? Was it an insult from the kitchens? Did the Sultan just signal displeasure with someone in particular? Even food becomes language here. History offers striking images of these feasts. Suleiman the Magnificent, hosting foreign diplomats, dazzled them with tables piled so high that some Europeans wrote home in astonishment, insisting the Ottomans must be richer than any kingdom in Christendom. Mehmed II, after conquering Constantinople, made his banquets into theater, inviting enemies turned subjects to see the wealth of their new master. These weren't meals. They were declarations carved in roasted lamb and sugared fruits. Entertainment threads through the courses. Musicians strike up soft rhythms. Dancers weave through the hall. Storytellers recite epics of past conquests. Between bites of pilaf, you hear echoes of your ancestors' victories, each story designed to remind everyone present that your reign is but another link in an unbroken chain of power. By the final course, sweets dripping with honey nuts and rose water, you lean back against cushions, attendants wiping your hands with perfumed cloths. The feast has filled more than your stomach. It has filled the court with reassurance, awe, and just a hint of envy. When you rise, the hall bows, the music softens, and the night shifts once again. The feast may be over, but the empire never sleeps. Ahead lies another theater this time, lit not by torches on grand tables, but by dim lanterns in smaller rooms where whispers and secrets carry more weight than banquets. The palace grows quieter after the feast, but quiet doesn't mean rest. Lanterns flicker in side chambers, eunuchs carry scrolls by torchlight, and the air changes from the smell of roasted meats to the musk of ink wax and secrecy. This is the hour when the empire exhales its hidden truths, when the Sultan trades the grand theater of banquets for the dim halls of intrigue. You step into a smaller chamber, walls lined with books, maps spread across low tables, cushions piled in shadows. Here, the mood is different. Intimate, tense, the kind of room where words are daggers and silence is heavier than gold. Trusted scribes and spies wait at the edges, their eyes lowered, but ears sharp, each holding scraps of news gathered from markets, ports, and battlefronts. The whispers begin. Reports of unrest in Anatolia, hints of Venetian ships stirring in the Mediterranean, rumors of janissaries grumbling in the barracks. These are not polished speeches like you heard from viziers earlier in the day. These are raw, unfiltered fragments of truth and half-truth, and yet in this palace, fragments often matter more than finished reports. A courier steps forward, bowing, unrolling a letter sealed in wax. The words inside are careful, written in code, the kind of message that could be read aloud in public and still conceal its meaning. You frown slightly, not at the letter, but at the implications. Even here, language is armor. Have you ever received a message so vague you weren't sure if it was praise or insult? Multiply that uncertainty until it governs entire provinces, and you understand the texture of these late-night exchanges. Spies are questioned one by one, their voices low, their stories weaving together like a tapestry that doesn't quite match. One insists a governor grows too ambitious. Another warns of merchants smuggling coined arrivals. A third whispers about palace servants bribed by foreign envoys. Which voice tells truth? Which voice carries planted lies? Your role is not simply to listen, but to sift, to weigh, tone posture, even the tremble in a hand. History remembers sultans who thrived in this darkness. Murad IV, stern and unbending, prowled Istanbul at night in disguise, testing whether taverns stayed open, past curfew punishing those who dared break his decrees. Others relied entirely on networks of spies, men and women, whose names never entered chronicles, but whose words shifted the empire's course. The chamber thickens with smoke from oil lamps, shadows dancing on maps that mark the empire's reach. Your fingers trace lines over borders. Hungary, Egypt, Mesopotamia, while voices continue around you. It feels endless, this web of intrigue, yet you know it is necessary. To rule an empire is to live not in daylight, but in twilight, where nothing is ever clear, and every rumor might be the spark that lights a rebellion. When the last scroll is rolled, the last whisper fades. Attendants bow and retreat, leaving you momentarily alone with silence. You lean back, closing your eyes briefly, but rest is still distant. Beyond this chamber, past more guarded doors, lies the final ritual of the day, returning to your private rooms, where sleep comes not as escape, but as another burden, heavy with the Empire's weight. Night in the palace doesn't descend gently, it settles like a velvet weight. The corridor's darkened lanterns glow low, and the echoes of footsteps soften to whispers. You leave the chamber of intrigues, body weary, though your mind still churns. Servants bow as you pass, eunuchs clear the way, and soon the day's final stage awaits your private quarters. Inside the room is vast yet hushed. Carpets soften each step, walls shimmer with tiles painted in deep blues and golds, and above you hangs a canopy of silk, heavy with embroidery. Attendants move quickly, removing layers of robes and jewels, folding them neatly, as if tomorrow they will again be weapons of state. The turban is unwrapped, the sword belt laid aside, until at last you are stripped of Empire's ornaments, left only as a man standing in quiet lamplight. But even here, privacy is an illusion. Eunuchs linger discreetly by the door. Scribes wait in case an urgent letter arrives, and somewhere outside, guards keep their rhythm under the stars. To the world, you are always the Sultan. In these walls, you are still never completely yourself. Have you ever felt the strange pressure of being watched, even when alone, like an invisible audience you cannot dismiss? That is your nightly reality. A tray of warm milk or sherbet is offered, sometimes figs or sweet pastries. You accept not out of hunger, but because routine matters. Ritual is what holds the day together, from dawn prayer to night drink. The Empire expects its ruler to live in patterns, never lapses. You sink onto cushions, the day replaying itself. The council's debates, the petitioners' voices, the steady lines of janissaries, the quiet games in the gardens, the sharp eyes of the harem, the gallop of the hunt, the weight of feasts, the endless shadows of secrets, all of it clings like the scent of incense. Each part of the day felt different, yet each was the same performance the Sultan's scene measured, judged, remembered. History remembers some rulers more by their nights than their days. Selim the Saint, who drank deeply into the evenings, became known as the Sot, his indulgence defining him more than his decrees. Suleiman, by contrast, often ended nights in poetry, writing verses that survive centuries later, revealing the human beneath the crown. One sultan is mocked, the other immortalized, both shaped by how they ended their days. Your attendants draw the curtains around the bed, silken barriers shutting out the palace for a few fragile hours. You lie back, eyes tracing the golden patterns above the Empire, pressing into your thoughts even as sleep beckons. Dreams will not be free. They will be crowded with the same faces, the same whispers, the same burdens. And yet for a few hours, you let the world dim your breathing, slow the weight of Empire, easing just enough to carry into another dawn. The Sultan sleeps, but the Empire never does. And so the day of the Sultan draws to its close. From the whispered prayers before dawn to the last heavy breath beneath silken canopies, every moment has been measured, watched, and woven into the great theater of Empire. You have walked through baths of marble robes, of silk gardens, of tulips, halls of justice, and feasts that glittered like treasure. Yet behind every jewel and ritual, the truth remains simple. The Sultan was as human as any of us, bound by duty, watched by rivals, longing for rest. Now as you close your own eyes, let the echoes of Topkapi soften into quiet. The Empire fades to a hum, and all that remains is calm breath, warmth, and gentle sleep.